Hello there. Well, it is the first of my Thursday streams, and we are going to be doing brainstorming for Noah's Archipelago for some coloring book projects. This is probably going to be in the second one, all about the A to Z of band life, wherein Noah and his various bands will be running around. But the first one, I think, is actually going to be Noah's resume. And I'm just going to start sketching as I babble on. So, the idea of it would be that his daughter Ursula has a homework assignment about jobs, and she's asking Noah about, what jobs he's had. So he tells her this, and for the most part, of course, she's bored until we get to Q, which happens to be quality taste tester at a chocolate factory. But, anyways, it'll be kind of an A to Z and various cartooning things. I think what I'm going to do is for each spread, because of course, if somebody's working with markers that might bleed through, they don't want two pieces of art back to back, right, on the same page. So you kind of want your art on one side and then blank on the back side, right? But I think what I'm going to do is instead of just having it like plain blank on the back side, I think it'd be kind of an opportunity to play around and have a little bit of a story. So our images will be, I mean, at the very beginning, I'm sure I'll have a drawing of Noah and Ursula and whatnot. She's asking the question, but I'll have like some sort of little blurb, and then we'll have, whatever. And with the posing and whatnot, I'm going to add in some like swirling bits and whatnot. So even when we're seeing Noah, I mean, right now, the first one there is artist model. I went through and I brainstormed a whole bunch of different jobs, and then the ones that I've put blue outlines around, I would try and have two per letter, because then 26 letters in the English alphabet, so two gives about 52. Some like X, I think I'm only going to have the one for, but a couple might have three, and it'll fatten it out to about 52, 55 coloring pages, and then the back pages would be about 110 page book, something like that. So, anyways, the first one is artist model. Um, so kind of, I mean, obviously, actual artist model, usually they pose nude, right? We're not going to have that in our coloring book, but that would be an opportunity to have like some sort of um, fabric and have different, a lot of the adult coloring books I've seen, they'll have like that sort of a pattern, you know. Anyway, so that gives opportunity for color choice and not just, I mean, the complexity is kind of one of the things with the adult coloring books, right? Um, so anyways, what we're doing today is just a little bit of um brainstorming for poses. And then by next week, I will try and have the first couple ready to go. Um, uh, we'll have Noah kind of where he's sort of kneeling. That would obviously be like a 2-minute pose because, nobody's going to want to be down on one knee and up on one foot like that for like a 30-minute. Um, but and then in the background, of course, we can have, easels, something like that. So, yeah, today I'm just doing some very quick brainstormy kind of ideas. And then we can have like the backs of, well, usually if people wouldn't have canvas in a life drawing session, they would have drawing boards, but again, we want more little shapes to fill in. Um, but I would probably have the pose something like that, and then we might even have, like, the curls on the back of somebody's head, and they're drawing him in a very bad manner, like amateurish manner, something like that. So, um, like I said, we're gonna kind of play around with that. Now, yoga studio receptionist just jumped out at me. I'm not gonna try and go in alphabetical order. And by next week, I will have a couple of these kind of what I call my blue line. So for anyone who's seen my other streams on like a Friday or Monday in particular, I'll have like a blue, non-photo blue pencil underdrawing. Um, so it might look like that. And um, then I ink over top of that, right? So I'll try and have a couple of those ready for next Thursday, and then we can go ahead and start inking. Although I suspect what we might do, um, I don't know that I'm going to use the dip pen and whatnot. I'll probably use these pens, but I may also, well, we'll see. Because the other thing would be, I had originally thought I would do these kind of blue drawings. And that doesn't show very much. I hold this up to the document camera, then maybe you can see a bit better. That I would do those kind of drawings and then use tracing paper and do this stuff on the tracing paper or vellum, which I may still do, because then I know when I scan that, it's going to be very clean. So I won't have to spend time. Like for graphic novels, I'm not less concerned, but I am working at a 1-to-1 ratio. Usually I try and draw bigger and shrink it, but the final drawings are going to be, the size of this page. The final drawings won't be in here. So anyways, we'll see exactly how I do it. Light box is one easy way to do it. I do have a light box, but this desk also gets very crowded. So I know, and I don't know if it would, how that would work on camera. We'll see. Anyways, that's beside the point. Let's that anyways, I think I said yoga studio receptionist, but then the other one that jumped out at me was zombie. So, and that gives kind of a chance to do some super detailed work. Um, so like we may even do a little um, blood veins. So, zombie being like in a amusement park situation or whatever. Um, I'll try and draw this one too, sort of to illustrate what I'm thinking of with um, the way that I would do the lines for the coloring in the skin tone. Noah would be very offended because I'm not making him look very attractive here. But we'll just say that this is the way his zombie makeup turned out. This job must have been paying very well for Noah to accept it and not suddenly be making himself look all cute. bin full of markers, but we'll just move that out of the way because I'm gonna knock it with my knuckles too much. I must admit I'm a little late to the whole adult, coloring book thing. I have a cousin who's 10 years younger than me, and I remember at some point, oh man, well, it has to have been at least 10 years ago because it's definitely I still lived in Vancouver and her making the comment that she and her friends liked, would, have a couple beers or, smoke a joint, and then, they would do this coloring thing on at first, I thought she meant, like, children's coloring books, and it was like she must have been ahead of the trend or something because then it was like, within a couple months, suddenly it was all over the place about these adult coloring books, and it's incredible art and all that. So, um, I've actually meant to start a couple over the years and then just haven't gotten around to it. Um, and even with the Zalmo, like, or did I say Zalmo? That's a different comic project. Sorry, I'm thinking of last night's stream when I was inking an old Zalmo 8-page comic that I had forgotten about. But with Noah, there has actually been a couple because I do this is part of a web comic I do. He's the main character, but a while ago, a couple years ago, there was like a joke where his wife Ruth is like a second grade teacher who's obsessed with like trying to get everybody to read and all that, which you would expect a second grade teacher would be concerned with that sort of thing. Um, anyways, so there was a discussion of like this Amazon summer reading list and the things that she had ordered a bunch of books for their 8-year-old daughter, and Ursula didn't want to read any of them because it's like classics like Anna Green Gables and whatnot, and Ursula not into that sort of stuff. And then this box, Amazon box, arrives at the same time, and it's got a copy of Captain Underpants, and then a couple adult coloring books like guitars for dudes, and like classic car, like men's oriented adult coloring books, and then it also had like a smutty Anne Rice novel. Um, so then they were having a discussion about this at bedtime, and you know her making the comment about him considering these adult coloring books and all this, and he recites these studies, that it improves hand-eye coordination and reduces stress levels. And then he says, "Plus, I'm a grown-ass dude, and if I want to color, I'm going to color." Anyways, so there's been the odd reference to adult coloring books, but we haven't actually gotten into designing one until very, very recently. So Noah's hair is kind of you know, a given for this. What I would probably do in reality would be to have a thicker outline on the lock and then use a finer pen for like these strands. Um, so it might be something like that, we'll say, and then well, except one that isn't running out of ink. But I think that kind of shows up on camera, though that's quite a bit finer. So In some ways, I suppose doing all this digitally would be easier because then I could sketch it very, even very loosely with the blue pencil, take a photo of it or scan it, and then do this tracing work um, in like Procreate or Clip Studio Pro or something. The one issue is I've been finding like I'm now doing the I keep saying wanting to say Zomo. I've been doing the Noah cartoons, um, just even this week doing them more marker and in sketchbooks because the ergonomics of working hunched over my iPad with with an Apple Pencil doing the comic was starting to really mess with my back and neck and whatnot after doing it that way for a few years. So that would be the problem with doing it that way. Plus, I do want to do at least some of the artwork on stream. Um, so, and then, yeah, so this is kind of I've had some ideas about doing this sort of stuff, but then I haven't actually sat down and drawn it. But if we have something like that, then people can choose their own colors and whatnot. But it makes it more interesting as opposed to, a giant area of flat color doesn't really work. Um, well, I mean, it does, but that's kind of not the idea of the adult coloring book. This one, of course, is going to be gross, but that's because he's supposed to be a zombie. And the thing too, like I would have on this side then the blurb where he's talking about getting hired to do, like I think some places call it like Fright Nights or whatever. I forget offhand if that's what Playland in Vancouver calls their October zombie stuff. Whether I'm thinking of Universal Studios down in Orlando calls it Fright Nights, but that sort of idea. So I can have the explanation, and then that allows it to be more close up. Because the other thing would be like having, if that was the outline of the page, and having Noah kind of like. Actually, I like that expression too. Already, just with the eyes. Um, Actually, in theory, this is happening before he married Ursula's mother. So, but he has been married before. Um, the other thing, too, of course, would be that if I do a big coloring page like this, I could always do a little illustration on the page with the blurb. So this could be, Ursula thinking that's what he's going to look like. And it's a line drawing if people want to color that in too. But the idea would be that that's actually just an illustration. Um, you know, and I wouldn't do this level of detail on that side, but that could be a way to do it too. I don't think I'm gonna have to label as to which, of the, job titles this one is. Don't know how many of these we're gonna get through tonight. I actually have a hard out at 8:15, 8:20 at the latest, so, lately I've been trying to stream about 2 hours, but, it ain't gonna happen tonight. Um, I will say also for anyone watching my stream, plan for the next few days, it is Easter, but I will be streaming tomorrow night on Good Friday. We will be working on the Ricky B. Rat book and inking two, maybe three more pages. Um, here, he's got his taste buds. Um, and Monday is a stat holiday here in Canada. It is, well, Easter Monday. I don't know if they do that in the States, but it's basically because it's the big stat is on the weekend, right? So I mean, other stuff like, other times when a holiday falls on what would normally be a day off, they just take the Monday off regardless, right? But, it's officially the stat is Easter Monday. I guess it depends. If you work in healthcare or something that's 24/7, I think the Sunday still has a stat pay. They may have double stat, like, where the, Sunday is the stat, but also the Monday is I don't know. I have not had to do that kind of, calculation, so I mean, this one looks pretty grotesque, but I might even on I had started drawing one of the other ones, would be like a busker or a mime, and I had started drawing this kind of patterning on Noah's face even, for that sketch. Um, it is definitely a strange way of looking at him, but that will be what makes it fun. Now, if Noah was a real person, like an actor instead of a cartoon character, I suspect I'd be getting a very angry letter from his agent over this drawing. Why are you making my client look hideous? Well, he's supposed to be dressed up as a zombie, making probably minimum wage at a theme park. Go back to the fatter one for the outline. When I'm doing the actual drawings, like, um, I will do them on, probably I don't know about Bristol board, but, like, drawing paper that has, like, the pads that have, like, the spiral on top. so I can rip them away. 'Cause, like a bound book would make it kind of a pain in the ass to scan. Um, anyways, that's just a side note. I said brainstorming, but this is kind of well into concept development and out of brainstorming on this particular one. And just for funsies, let's misspell brains. Let's spell it with a Z or a Z, depending, instead. But so I would kind of continue on, and that would be the style of illustration for a close up of him. Obviously, presumably, most of them aren't going to have the crazy bloodshot eyes, but they're. But yeah, I kind of like. Let me make a note. I mean, yeah, I'll have the video, but story pages may have small illustration too. Oh, I'll be more like crazy window there tonight. I don't. Well, I'm wearing a lav mic, so I'm sure it probably doesn't pick up. But um, so even something like this would end up obviously on a much smaller scale beam like that, because we do want to. For the zombies, we can do that sort of stuff. Um, in the illustration, but for this, you would kind of need to have the whole room with, random people staring at Noah in a circle to really um, communicate that it is, he's not just sitting on the corner of his bed wearing just a towel. Like that is actually being a model. Um, so gondolier, what else can sketch? Uh, da, 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 da. Airport scarecrow was another one. Now, I suspect when they say airport scarecrow, what they're talking about is, mm, well, for this sake of this, I'm just going to use a pen. But I suspect what they're talking about is guys who like run around, and sometimes they have little like ATVs. Um, do I know what an ATV looks like? I've seen them in person, but we're not going to draw them accurately. uh, We'll assume Noah's ATV has streamers on the handlebars, but where they go and they like drive around the ends of the runway to scare off birds and stuff like that. Um, actually, I have no idea. Well, I mean, if it's a job that a person does, I assume it's not just like It's not just that they're setting up, actual scarecrows, right? Um, so I should probably write what I'm trying to draw here. Airport scarecrow. I'll have to remember too to change up the hairstyles because some of these are supposed to be jobs that Noah had when he was like a teenager. So the hairdo would be different. I think I've drawn before Noah in the 90s having like that kind of like uh, well, a lot of guys in the 90s had it where it was like a middle part. Noah looks like so weird when I draw him that way, but he would have looked that way when he was a teenager, in his early 20s. I guess the back of his seat. He can have like a little back of the seat. And we would want to convey somehow that this is at the airport, so we would need to have a very big plane back there. Funny, I did some research to get the titles of jobs. Um, that would be weird for Noah, but did I do actual research as to what they involve? No. That kind of makes it more fun, my opinion. like one that I did actually look up at some point is I saw somebody talking about quote lollipop dude, and at first I'm thinking, oh, like in a candy shop, but no, that's the apparently the slang term in I think the English in England for the what do we call them flagmen here. What that have the sign that flips on one side, it says stop, and then they turn it around and did I just give a thumb down to my own video? Anyways, one side has the stop sign, and the other side says slow. Oh man, let me do this so that to see if it picks up. There it does. Hopefully that evens out. I mean, I don't think YouTube's algorithm would be like, she gave a thumbs down to her own video. Um, anyways, so the sign dude with the little sign that says slow and stop kind of is called a lollipop dude. You can see Noah doing that, working on his tan. Um, there are definitely some random weird ones. Some of which, granted, you hear the really weird ones where it's like, okay, I don't even know how to draw that. So, or there'd be ones where it's like, okay, I think that's above Noah's pay grade. You know, I'm guessing we should probably have multiple crows. And then areas for texture would be having cross hatching on the wheels, um, feathers on the crows, etc. And maybe one's trying to attack him. did find, like, there was some, like, long, thread on Reddit where it was, like, people's weird jobs, and somebody actually talked somewhat about not this type of job exactly, but kinda parallel, but, the guy's sister, I think, got a job, um, she was an aeronautics engineer, but basically what her job was throwing, dead birds, like turkey carcasses and whatnot, at jet engines to see, how badly it would damage, what size bird would do what size of damage to a windscreen or to, the turbine on the engine and all that. I remember there being like a Mythbusters episode about that sort of thing where they did like chicken cannon with frozen chickens. But anyways, that was, this, lady's job, with her engineering degree. Very fun for sure. Of course, you would look at that and go like, the problem with that for a project like this is that Noah did not go to pursue higher education, so he is not an engineer. He is a stay-at-home dad by day, and he, sings in a bunch of cover bands at night. So, definitely wanna make sure his ATV has streamers on the, handles in case I forget what those are supposed to be. And, in the background, you wanna have some trees, you wanna have some leaves, you wanna have a windsock. All the airports still have that even though really well, I guess it's a quick visual reference even though everybody uses, weather apps now. So that would be one sketch there. Yeah. Still, the zombie one is that's probably gonna be the thumbnail for this sketch this stream. Maybe not. Maybe in the next hour and 10 minutes, I'll come up with something even better. My temptation for Xerox salesman is gonna be showing Noah Xeroxing his ass. Vocalist, well, of course, Noah sings in bands, so that's kind of easy to do. Ice rink hand holder. That one might be well, I mean, it's not necessarily it's hard to illustrate, but it's hard to convey that that is actually a job as opposed to him on a date or whatever. But let's do the outdoor ads sign waiver. This used to be quite a thing, um, 20 years ago or so. I think that timeline's about right. Because I've lived where I live now on Vancouver Island since 2017, and I think it was already not. But when I lived it the rest of my life in Vancouver and Richmond specifically, and I remember all of a sudden one day you would start seeing people just standing, holding signs, and that was their job out in terrible weather or whatever. And some people would just stand there and hold like the sign that was like the pizza place sign, and some people would like swing it around and dance with it. Noah seems like a swing it around and dance with it kind of a dude. Um, One girl who I suspect probably did very well for the pizza place she was advertising. She was standing on the corner of the road in her bikini. It was in July, and getting her tan on, like, you could see she had her, like, suntan lotions in a little basket on the ground next to her. Um, and she kicked off her flip-flops, so she was even standing, barefoot on the sidewalk, which, ew, gross, but, you know, and she was kinda holding the sign off to the side so she wouldn't get, well, I at the time, I presumed that it was so that she wouldn't, block the sun and have an uneven tan, but maybe it was, so that the boobs were, more on display. Not that she was pretty flat chested actually. So, but yeah, she's standing there like that with her hair up in a messy bun. And I do remember thinking, it's like, okay, what did the boss say? Go out there and wear a bikini, or was it just like, well, if I'm standing out in the sun all day, I'm putting on my suntan lotion and that. But, um, anyways, I envision Noah as one of those sorts of sign holders. Again, would have been quite some time ago. This is one where, because we need to see the whole sign to kind of convey the thing, he's going to be on a much smaller scale, which means he's going to be much simpler. But and there were some where it was like a sandwich board type of thing where the person would wear that over their shoulders and then their head would be there. Um, but some of them were just like having a sign to hold. And again, I'm drawing the wrong hair. If that was Noah in the 90s, he had the Bud Bundy hairdo. I don't remember if anyone remembers the later seasons of Married with Children where Bud had kind of the longer hair in a side part like that. Yeah, I guess what I could do is something like that to break the face up. Then he looks like a um, ventriloquist dummy, but make him kind of pencil necked because that was when he was a teenager. And for this job, Ursula would want to know if he got paid in pizza. I remember some places would actually have like the big sidewalk sandwich board signs, and then they would still have the dude. Usually, despite she was an exception. Usually, it was dudes. It's usually either young guys or older men who obviously were trying to make a few extra bucks. Um, so Maybe what we could do for this one be we would draw Noah there holding the sign, right? And then there would be the sandwich board sign, and then in the background we have the restaurant that also has a huge pizza sign. Something like that. So we've got a couple. And I mean, I think this one and still the zombie one. You know, there's gonna be different ones that have different levels of complexity and whatnot too, right? I feel like I'm getting a bit of a sore throat, but hopefully, hopefully not. But excuse me while I chug. So if you hear a glug glug glug, well, that's why. Um, is the downside of streaming for a couple hours every weeknight that it does start to add up if I'm actually talking. Koi fish wrangler. Koi fish wrangler. What if the koi fish gang up on Noah? And again, I'm gonna do kind of a quick where he's ponds actually. Well, I guess the pond, well, even the big like pet store ponds, they're kind of only waist deep. So Noah would be. I feel like this would also be a teenage Noah job. Make a note that the idea is they gang up on him. I don't know. I do that a different way. That's the thing with these. Sometimes you have the first idea and then something else better comes up. And then sometimes you have one like that where it's the first idea is the best idea. Anyways, Zumba instructor, but I think we're gonna call it something else. I think I thought it would be called Zimbo instructor, and when Ursula starts to ask, "Isn't it Zoom?" and he puts his hand over her mouth after Zoom and says, "Hey, we don't infringe on trademarks here. You want Daddy to get sued?" Um, reindeer minder. Reindeer minder is another one that the instant idea I have. Um, you know how the reindeer kind of they butt heads, right? Um, so I'm thinking he tried to break up a reindeer fight, and they've I don't know if reindeer are actually tall enough, but, mind you, I guess they get their heads down. Um, do I know what a reindeer looks like? Yeah, vaguely. Or the way it could be is that this happened, but then lifted him up so that Noah, the reindeer's horns are kind of like whatever. Um, and then there's Noah dangling over with his butt hanging out. I don't know why the reindeer boss would have been Gary, but it just seems like it would be a dude named Gary that Noah's yelling for help from. Sleeper was one that was kind of fun to find out that there are people who are professional sleepers. What they do is they book into hotels and like literally go to sleep and find out how comfortable well the mattresses are and whatnot, and then report back to the hotel chain. These kind of vertical blinds still a thing where they have like the little chains that go from uh they'd have little punctures at each end, and then there would be like one of those. It's like the ball chain that looks like the pull thingies that you have on a ceiling fan, but that same kind of like little ball chain, and then they go from side to side, and you'll have a line of the little balls on either side. Um, and then up top, you can either have them open or flip this way or the other way. But seem to be everywhere in the 80s, and I don't know that I've seen them as often since. Well, it seems to be more like the Venetian horizontal blinds, right? Um, this job being on Noah's resume would mean that, when the wife is nagging him about him taking naps on the sofa or whatnot, he'd be like, "Hey, I am a professional sleeper. I gotta keep my skills up. Never know when the economy might get bad and I might have to start being a professional hotel room sleeper again." We would probably crop that like that, right? But and I would worry about, well, I mean, like some stuff would be obvious because you would have like for him, you probably wouldn't go too crazy with him, but might sort of fingers go that way. Um, and then for the bedding, of course, it would be sort of outlining the folds. And this is certainly something where it's like, I definitely want it to be a good coloring book in terms of a mix of, small details that can be colored in and whatnot, but it's kind of more like an art, um, a comedy thing with the cartoon character. So, not that it's 100% showcase, because if it was 100% art showcase, then that would just be a matter of doing another graphic novel. And I am going to be working on a Noah graphic novel. Um, like these Thursday streams for the next few couple, 3, 4, few weeks, they will be about this coloring book project, but then I would move the coloring book stuff to probably Wednesday nights, once I wrap up with the Zalmo, inking for that, and, then I would start on the Thursday streams working on the graphic novel, but we'd have that kind of, line work for that. Let me just go. I got a design for that. I have a design for that. I have a design for that and that. So A is kind of brainstormed. Um, B was the easiest one. In the actual comic, one of the things Noah does is he sings in a few different tribute bands, and one of them is a U2 tribute band. So there's been an ongoing thing with him as a Bono impersonator. For a book like this, I'm not I don't know, I was kinda going, like, rather than have anyone specific, um, though as far as I know, I mean, you can because Bono is a public figure, you can definitely do cartoons with him. You couldn't rip do the cartoons based on somebody else's photo of Bono, right? Because then that's a copyright issue, potentially. But anyways, I was like, "Yeah, that might even," and even in the webcomic, I don't really mention it as much as I used to. Like, initially, that was a bigger part of it, and then as the characters developed, it's like, yeah, every so often, there will be, like, a Bono joke or whatnot, but I kinda don't, bother so much with that anymore now. Part of that's also probably because for a while, I didn't get into U2 until, like, 5 or 6 years ago. I found out that some of the songs I heard on the radio that I liked were U2. Um, but, and then I was, like, heavily into U2 for several years, but then I've kinda just like, ugh, it's worn off. And I heard they have a new EP out as of, like, a month or so ago, and I have, like, just the little bits I heard about it online, I was like, "I have 0 interest in ever listening to this." But anyways, so we're gonna skip the Bono impersonator. Barista is kind of an obvious one that no one would have been a barista at some point, but, um, I think it'd be more interesting visually to draw him doing balloon animals, busking, maybe busking. Like, that's definitely part of the story that he was a busker in the 90s. Um, but we have over here mime. So I kind of that's kind of a busker. So it might go there, it might go there. I'm gonna put a slash busker. Um, but I think it would be more interesting to draw him doing the bike messenger thing and balloon animal artist. Now, in somewhere I didn't have a lot of choice, and like, Noah's not going to be a human resources manager, so I had like human statue, which is also kind of a busker and also kind of a mime. Uh, Actually, I'm going to go like that, same as human statue. Um, and then Hotel Dorman, right? Um, anyways, I lost my train of thought, but the busker thing, we probably try and just have a couple. Um, like even here for roadie, that one of the other books that I'm going to be working on, you saw at the very beginning one of them. Well, that was a sketch I did for Noah with his guitarist Howie and the drummer Mike, and they're coming home from a gig. Noah's passed out asleep, and hey, look, he's drooling again. Um, so like the roadie thing kind of would go more like in here. Of course, Noah's a singer, so he doesn't do any of his own roadie stuff. He just takes his microphone in his clothes. So we'll probably scribble out roadie. Rose butter is like grafting, and with roses that could work. Um, yeah, we'll probably end up just having two for each letter, really. Um, yeah, kind of. Yeah, I think we are going to just have two. Recycling, I was gonna have that, and then I found reindeer minder. I'm like, okay, I think we're doing that instead. So yeah, we're pretty much gonna have two. Other than I don't know, X, we're probably just gonna have the Xerox salesman, and that's we'll just have 51 or something like that. Although I think, like I said, we're gonna have the intro and the little story blurb on the left side, so there'd probably be like a one or two opening drawings that show Noah and his daughter Ursula talking. Might even have one or two interspersed um, through all this stuff, like because Q is the other one where I only had the one. Basically, all the jobs with Qs are all like quality assurance and then a specialty, right? So quality assurance tester and a candy factor is the one I went with. So um, we'll probably have a couple extras of that aren't his jobs, but are like the little story blurb illustrations. Anyways, that's kind of neither here nor there. How am I doing for time? Just like watching it because I know I have to. I've got to be somewhere at 9 p.m. today. Usually I don't. Um, so now it's suddenly like, is it time for me to go yet? No, I've still got another half hour. So, dolphin interaction photographer. I was up way too early this morning. My brain is fried. Um, Ghost tour guide. That one might be kind of interesting, but I think yeah, gondolier I think is a better option. I actually know somebody who said at some point he was living in Venice working as a gondolier long time ago. Um, do I know anything about Venice gondoliers? No, no, of course not. Are they gonna stop me? Of course not. And that was one that I think I would want to have a closer up crop where, because we will be explaining it obviously um, in the little story blurb. Give Noah some bushy eyebrows. And he's singing, we'll assume. Some of the jobs too, they would go in, one could lead to the other, right? So I remember gondoliers don't wear berets, but I think they have some other little hat that they wear. Um, or maybe Noah's wearing a beret because he got kind of confused about the geography. Italy, France, it's all the same thing, right? Not really. Um, but like for example, I have theme park mascot, the zombie thing working at a theme park. Probably one comes from the other. You know, busking could lead to balloon animal artist, the human statue, the mime, um, all kind of being related, and then he's a vocalist. We will have at least one drawing of him singing on stage. Um, vocalist could lead to jingle writer. The merman even could either be at a theme park, so it's something related to the mascot thing, or could be related to the artist model, um, pastry chef, kitchen assistant, um, candy factory tester, it's a few things, ice cream sales. Like you can see how that career path all kind of goes together. Anyways, and even here for the gondolier, if I do a drawing of him as a mime, he's going to be basically wearing the exact same outfit, right? He's got his little red, I think they're supposed to be red. Um, neck scarf thing, cravat. I was in a painting class last fall, and one of our other class members had this beautiful painting she was working on based on photographs she took in Venice, um, 20 years ago or something. It was three gondoliers sitting on a bench on kind of on their break. Um, and that was a fantastic painting. Like anything else, she of course just saw the flaws, but that's kind of how we all are, right? Maybe what I've got is, so I think the gondoliers sit at the back of, or stand at the back of the gondola, right? So maybe if we go and then we have the front of the boat like that. And then Noah is standing up. That I would want to plot out more what the folds in the shirt might do, and then arrange the stripes around them, type of thing, right? And then we could also have like some notes in the background that are more things to be colored in, and then some waves in the water, some wood grain on that, and on the oar. And that's the thing, to avoid repetition too much, then that also knocks out the mime, because that would be a very similar, other than the mime that I had plotted out was going to be the, you know, his arms here, because he's definitely in a box type of thing, or he's pretending to be. By the way, for anyone who's not familiar with Zamo, or I keep saying Zamo, with Noah's Archipelago, uh, they do all have just the three fingers and the thumb. Made sense when I started the comic. It's like, oh, that's more cartoony, and then it's like, and then it starts to look very weird, especially. But anyways, the mime thing was like that, where I was trying to have it where he's like doing the "I'm in a box" type of thing. Um, that could even end up on the cover or something, even if it doesn't end up in there in the actual book, right? Um, so I have a little drawing for that. Underwear model in the 90s, of course, goes with artist model. So we can kind of play off of that. Water slide tester. So there's a few where it's like quality assurance, mystery shopper is a customer service quality assurance, sleeper for the bed, water slide tester, candy tester. Um, there's some like line stander is apparently a job, right? Um, and it would be easy to draw him standing in a line, but how do you convey that that's like the job? Well, I guess that's part of having the little blurb on the other side kind of explains that, right? But um, Andrew zombie. Part of me kind of just wants to continue playing with the zombie drawing. But I did say that this was a brainstorming stream. So let's keep it going. Uh, well, let's draw him doing his best underwear model in the 90s. So use the fatter pen. Oops, that was a bit too big. I'm doing the wings that he has for his current hairdo. That doesn't work. The one problem I am going to run into, I think, if I do too many that are like this scale, as opposed to the really big ones or the smaller ones, is that on this scale, it's going to be very weird to have any sort of I'll give them pencil arms. 90s underwear models were pretty buff dudes, as I recall. But it does make it a little difficult um, to give enough complexity to the coloring, right? Um, because I mean, you can do the anatomical stuff, so the muscle structure, but even that, your pecs are going to be like that. I mean, I guess sometimes you do get, I'm trying to remember when I used to read Muscle and Fitness in the 90s. You do have like they're not separate heads, but you very often get like a striation in the super buff guys who have super low body fat, where you get these kind of like ridges, and then there would be like thinner striations, right? If you ever seen pictures of Dorian Yates at Mr. Olympia in the 90s, I mean, but Noah isn't one of those guys, is the other thing, right? So, I gotta think about that. Uh, So you either end up doing the rib thing and then he looks super emaciated, which should not be really an underwear model look. Um, plus, I mean, this would be something where if it wasn't, and I mean, I'm saying established in terms of like my output, but an established character in my artistic universe, then you can do that more easily. But it's kind of a given with Noah that he does not lift weights, he does yoga, um, and he likes eating cheeseburgers. So this presents a problem. Whereas actually his eldest son is a bodybuilder. So if it was Adam doing the underwear model thing, then you could sort of have that. Although Adam looks is more of the Dorian Yates wannabe look. So that would be, yeah. I got these are things that I do have to figure out pretty quickly, right? Um, and there may be some where I either go back and find a different U job, like usher. Of course, in movie theater nowadays, of course, most of them don't have like the livery style uniform, but you can definitely find old timey usher uniforms used as a reference. That would kind of be a little bit similar to the hotel doorman, is the thing. Um, so it may even be that there may be 50. Excuse me. Sorry, I didn't mean to burp into my lav mic. It may be that there are still going to be 50 drawings, but we'll include some more of like the Ursula and Noah arguing stuff, um, so as to not have too much duplication. Um, the other thing, of course, the other thing that just popped into my head is Noah in the 90s thinking that he was hired as an underwear model, and then he finds out that he's actually being hired as the before picture for like supplement ads, like, and then they're just gonna like Photoshop his head onto some like roided out dude afterwards. So you still end up not having a lot of coloring variation in him. Uh, so the thing with this project is it kind of ends up being a little bit in between worlds where it's I mean, it'll be an adult coloring book, but in some cases, the jokes kind of supersede the drawing. I don't know. Here's make a note. And thought he was hired as an underwear model, and he's hired actually as the before image for supplements. Hired as an underwear model. Okay, that's something I can work with actually, because then what we can have is we can even have um, something on a computer, right? Where we see Noah, because we'll have it at that scale, him looking kind of flabby. And then we just put a dotted line, and he goes on to some muscle dude with no next head. Of course, if this was not a coloring book but a cartoon, full color cartoon, that'd be really fun because you'd have this guy wouldn't even have the same skin color. Ah, my phone's going off. Sorry about that. And then we do get the striations and whatnot, right? Uh, and little veins and stuff. Draw a little hand icon. And then down here, it's thinner areas and whatnot. Um, we could even have like a billboard thing or something. Billboard. Make a note to myself. Show Photoshop. We are making progress. And there goes my phone again. Yeah, I know. Um, anyways, we got another 15 minutes that we'll muck around with, and then I gotta get. Um, actually, because it's been an hour and a half. So why don't I quickly kind of encapsulate? Because I know these wrap ups I drag on for like 10 minutes, and then we'll just end it a little short. So, what are we working on for the next while on Thursdays? We're going to be working on a coloring book featuring my character Noah Thorson from my webcomic Noah's Archipelago, also his daughter Ursula. Um, the premise of this coloring book, because I can't just do pictures, I have to have like a story and whatnot and some jokes, is that Ursula has a homework assignment about jobs. She asks her old man Noah about that, and he explains some of the different jobs he's had, and he's had a lot. Excuse me. So at least 26 jobs, and probably some of the letters in the A to Z will have more than one. So what did we look at? Artist model in the first one, and it'll start with like a few like coloring pages where it's like Ursula asking Noah, and anyways, each spread would have the one page that's supposed to be colored on here, and then like a little blurb. Some of these blurbs will also have like a mini illustration, but um, not necessarily intended as a coloring page, really. Because I don't know. I'm gonna self-publish this. It'll be through Amazon. I don't know about paper quality in terms of marker bleed, right? Um, that is something, of course, that it's kind of buyer beware for anything self-published. But then, everybody else there's definitely people nowadays using like AI, and sometimes not even their own photos, sometimes their photos, and having I don't know if Chat GPT does it, or there's a different one that will take your picture and just turn it into a line drawing. Mind you, you don't even need to do that because there's um, That's something that Photoshop filters can also do and have been able to do for a long time. But anyways, so you sometimes I have seen people in like my local, sometimes you'll have like your city name connected, right? And somebody who is talking about selling this AI, this coloring book. And I know I looked at it and I was like, that is far too much fine line work detail to have been drawn by hand. Like very few people would do that. So I was kind of like, I probably ran it through a filter or whatever. But my thing is, I don't care, or I'm not. I wouldn't be buying it, so I wouldn't feel ripped off because I don't care, right? But there are a bunch of people going like, "Is that AI? Is that AI?" Blah 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 blah. Blah. And the person, to their credit, they were honest and it was like, "Yes, I am using AI to do this." And then, of course, all hell breaks loose, right, in the comic section. And I was just like, hide all from, dude. I wasn't gonna wade into that, but this stuff I am gonna draw by hand. I guess, I always like to say I'm lazy, but I guess I'm not lazy enough. Or I just like, I don't know. I would assume the AI would screw it up even if I fed in the sketches and said make a finished drawing. So we are going to do this the old-fashioned way, and we'll do most of the drawing work on stream. They'll be on the Thursday streams for a little while until I get ready to start working on my first Noah's Archipelago graphic novel. And by that point, I'll just move in, start working on the coloring book on Wednesdays. So that's the long intro, the A to Z of Noah's job. So the first one, we've got a rough sketch of the pose, really, for him as artist model, and we will have artists around. So you're not just coloring him, you're coloring around. Then the Z, from the front of the book to the back of the book, would be Noah uh, acting as a zombie at one of those like Halloween Fright Night type of events. We'll probably have the little sketch of that Ursula's thinking on the left-hand page. And then I do think, as much as possible, I don't want every page to be like a close-up of Noah's face drawn this way because that's going to get repetitive. Although at some point maybe I would do like a Halloween specific and then that would make more sense. But anyways, this one would definitely be close up with the, like the rotting flesh, fake makeup, the caption, the lines and all that, the bloodshot eyes. Um, so that would be Noah as a zombie. Keep wanting to say Zama. I almost said Zama as a zombie. Another A1, airport scarecrow. Now, this is obviously a very rough sketch, but we figure out exactly how we're doing this to try and maintain both the detail, but also have it all fit in without having any areas that are too tiny that get to be frustrating to color in. So that's going to be one of the challenges for me because it's a different mode of drawing than I have done before, right? And then in the middle, outdoor sign holder, pizza salesman, whatever you want to call it. So where we would have like the triple sign where there's a sandwich board on the line. He's holding one that says pizza. I would probably outline the letters and outline the arrow. This is Noah as a teenager, so ignore that face. And then he's standing in front of the pizza building, right? So we have that. The koi fish wrangler. I like the idea. I don't know exactly how I'm going to draw it so that it's obvious that the fish are actually trying to attack him when he's trying to get one out. Teenage Noah. Um, then the reindeer minder, he's getting a wedgie because he's gotten caught on one of the reindeer antlers. Telling for his boss to help professional sleeper in a hotel testing out hotel room beds. Gondolier. And this, because I think this is the right scale for him, and then we would end up having like um this might be a fun one to have Noah, in theory, wearing a beard. Now, that's probably getting a little too fine even. Um, but we would want to have some sort of line work in his face, because otherwise that's a very large flat area, right? And then obviously we'd be able to do that sort of thing for his little scarf, and similarly for his hair. And then the details in the gondola. The mime being another one. I'm still not sure. Like, I like the mime sketch idea that I already had. So it may go in, but it also kind of feels repetitive with the gondolier. We'll see, right? And then the other one we brainstormed for today was this underwear model. And like I said, because he still is kind of skinny fat, um, which then makes it so you don't have like the little areas for coloring. He's more of a big flat area, well, big pudgy area, um, which makes it a little awkward, as opposed to, say, when you're drawing like flowers. Now, obviously, I didn't make this mug, but something like that with the irises, then it's easy to add in those like thin slivers for um, the detail in adult coloring books. For drawing people, it's a little harder. But this concept where he finds out his head that he was the before model, and then they just put his head on like some big buff dude's body, that means that then I can do this kind of muscle separation striation to make it interesting from a coloring perspective on the buff guy. And then Noah's standing there, and you see his head being moved over, and then the explanation would be on this page, right? And so that's kind of enough to get me started. Not sure exactly what we're going to start with next week. I think probably next week it would be fun to have one of the A's and the Z. I mean, there will be another Z1 Zumba instructor, but I think I'll probably for next week try and have a sketch of this ready to ink, and then a sketch, so the zombie and the airport scarecrow ones, and then we'll kind of play around with that next week. So that's going to be, it's a shorter stream today, but thanks for coming and checking in. And that's sort of how I do all my brainstorming stuff. I know it looks a little messy, but the final work will end up looking like something like that. These kind of super messy drawings are also the way I thumbnail out stuff that ends up looking like the Miles or the Ricky B. Rat. Do I have any Ricky B. Rat? Yeah, I do. It's too bad I had the book. Could have sworn I had the book here earlier. Okay. But obviously this is the project I'll be working on tomorrow night. And that's this is the actual size. That's the size I drew it at. So you can sort of see the reduction. But maybe, just maybe. No, okay. I thought I had the Ricky B. Rat sketchbook that I thumbnailed this stuff out in, but it basically it looked messier than that even. If I'm not mistaken, I think that Ricky in the bathtub looked something like, I think I had like measuring or something like that. That was the sketch for in the sketchbook for this. So scribble that out because he doesn't belong in this book. But the brainstorming stuff, it's like, okay, I kind of want to show the process on stream because it relates to something I'm going to be working on stream. But then it also makes it kind of awkward because I'm sure, and I've seen the numbers live today where some people come in for 30 seconds and nobody was in when I was working on this page, right? I'm like flipping through that and I see one come up and then it's like 10 seconds later, I was like, what the hell is this? And then it's back down there, like the number disappears. Nobody was watching when I was doing the cool sketches. But that's just the luck of the draw. People watch later and see the whole process. But anyways, point is, that's what I wanted to do this week. And then on Tuesday, I had the other one for the calendar, the kind of the brainstorming session, because then it's like, okay, at the end, now you, once it's drawn, you can look and say, oh, this started with like that, and then how it eventually shows up. But I realize it's a little disconcerting for watching, going like, what the hell is, well, why is this being streamed? That's not, that looks like crap. It's like, well, yeah, because it's the brainstorming sketch. Anyways, as a whole long explanation. See, I told you that my wrap ups always take like 10 to 15 minutes as I go over the concepts. So, anyways, we will leave this on in case anybody flips in in the last like 30 seconds. So, this is the sort of what the line work will eventually look like in theory. That's the plan for the coloring book, depending on the scale, you know, and whatnot. But it'd be that kind of small sections dividing. So it'll kind of look a little trippy. It'd be interesting to work with because that's very different. Well, you just saw my Ricky B. Rat, one of the finished pages. It's a very different drawing style. So it's like almost like using a different muscle. So that, but that's going to be what makes it kind of fun. And probably make my brain hurt to remember how, or to figure out how to balance the needs of a coloring book project versus my usual drawing style, right? But that's the challenge of it. So, hope you've enjoyed this sort of flip through of my brainstorming process. And yeah, tomorrow night we are inking more Ricky B, the rock and roll rat, like I just showed you. Um, Monday we're inking Miles, the other rodent pal of ours. Tuesday, we are going to be working on the calendar. Wednesday, we're inking Zamo. And next Thursday, we will be starting on finished drawings for this sort of stuff for this coloring book. So, hope you've enjoyed the little glimpse and process so far. And we will see you soon. All streaming times are 6:30 Pacific, by the way, Monday through Friday on 5 different projects. So we will see you real soon. Bye for now.